It's Halloween, and I keep hearing a commotion outside. What the heck is going on? All right, so I've got something exciting today. I'm going to be installing front and rear skid plates on my 2019 Tesla Model 3. So there's a reason I am swapping out my skid plate. It's because mine is mostly gone. If you have an older Model 3, then it came from the factory with a fiberboard skid plate. They did this for two reasons: for weight reduction and also cost reduction. Now, I believe newer vehicles, especially Model Y, do have a plastic skid plate. Still not that strong, but much better than this fiberboard. This is what's left of mine. And as you can see, it is deteriorating and it's ripped off the car. This happens for several reasons, mainly moisture. If you go through any deep water, which it's been raining here a lot, I've gone through a lot of puddles. A lot of Tesla owners are really brave, thinking they can go through deep water because they don't have to worry about hydrolocking an engine. It's an electric car. That is true. You don't have to worry about hydrolocking your engine, but if you've got fiberboard underneath, water will damage it. Same if you live in a snowy environment. This gets wet and damp, it's just gonna rot and break apart. So that being said, I'm gonna raise up the car, I'm gonna remove whatever's left of this, there's not a whole lot, and I'm gonna replace it with an aluminum skid plate from EVAnnex. I'd like to give them a shout out. They co-sponsored this video, and they're really helping me out a lot with my car and my build, so thank you. This is the kit that they sell. I've got both front and rear. The smaller one is the rear. You'll see the back here. And this larger flat piece is the front skid plate. Once I get the car up, I'll show you what these skid plates are protecting. So it's very important that you have some sort of protection underneath. If yours is ripped or falling apart, you might want to consider swapping yours out as well. Yes, these are made out of aluminum and they are a lot heavier than the factory fiberboard, but it also offers a ton more protection from rocks and other things flying up to where your battery connections are. There's a lot of sensitive pieces of equipment under that car that you want to protect. This will give you peace of mind. Yes, it is heavier, but I mean, I can lift it with one hand here. It's not like super heavy. You're not adding 50 pounds to your car. If you're worried about range, I really wouldn't worry about hurting your range. This is a smoother piece. Even the bolts that hold it on are going to be recessed so the air flows right over it. So it's going to help with airflow. But it is a little bit heavier, but if you really need weight reduction, just kick one of your passengers out. All right, so I've got the car lifted on Rhino ramps. These are the Rhino Ramps Max, so they hold more weight. If you're gonna use these for an EV, I would recommend that just because they're more sturdy. Always make sure you put wheel chocks behind just so the car doesn't roll back off of that ramp. That'll help hold it in place, as well as make sure the parking brake is on, of course. Got them on both wheels. We're up on the Rhino ramps. These are the Rhino ramps that I recommend. They hold the weight that you need. I got this because I've got a Cybertruck on order, so it's gonna hold plenty of weight to lift any vehicle I have in the future. I'll make sure I put a link in the description if you're interested in something like this. This is the size of the box that it ships in, so it is a pretty large box. Now that I don't need this anymore, I can cut it in half and use it to lay down on while I work underneath the car. And these are the hardware bags that come with it. The smaller bag with the 9 bolts here, it looks like these are 4mm hex heads on that. This is for the front skid plate. And the larger bag with more hardware, this is going to be for that rear skid plate. And it looks like it does come with this anti-seize lubricant on here. You'll want to put the anti-seize on all the bolts That just keeps it from rusting into place there. It'll make it easier to remove when you need to remove it to get underneath the skid plate. So make sure you use that. It's got a couple little rubber caps to put in some of the holes underneath, and I'll make sure to show you that. These are some of the sockets that I was told in the instructions that I might need. Looks like a 12 millimeter, a 13 millimeter, 15 millimeter. I've got this 4 millimeter hex, and I might need a 10 millimeter. I'll go look and see if I have one of those as well. And yes, you'll also need a 10 millimeter. I don't know why I always lose these. All right, so going underneath the car, you'll see that mine is completely ripped off. It is shredded to where it's no longer even there. So, you'll also see what this thing is protecting. It is really important that you use a skid plate, because if any debris flies up there and severs any of those connections, your car is just toast. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just climb under here and start removing all these old bolts that have, shredded remnants of fiberboard around them. And and then we'll go ahead and put the new one in place. So of course, all of them came out except for one. This one's all bent up and it's just spinning freely. Nothing I can do will get this to back out. So I may have to just cut this one off and drill out the hole. So I didn't have to drill it out after all. It looks like this captive nut here just came out of the frame of the car, and this thing's probably just rusted on in there, and that's why it was breaking loose and spinning like that. So I don't know if I'm gonna need to reuse this to make the other screws that came in the kit bolt into place. I'm assuming I do. So I'm gonna probably put some penetrating oil on this, see if I can break out the rust and at least get this unscrewed from that, and maybe see if there's a way to manually put this on. I don't know if it's going to stay put in the frame though. It may just spin like the other one, but it's worth a shot. If you run into a similar problem and you need to get this captive nut off of yours, the best thing to use is PB Blaster. That really does eat into the rust. So I'm gonna spray this down and just let it sit for a while and see if I can get that to come loose. All right, so just taking a closer look at the damage that was done underneath here, you'll see that this is where the screw goes into, and on the other side of this flat plate right there is a captive nut. And when this got impacted and dented that, you can see how it's dented there, right there. It broke the captive nut off the back, and that's why it was just spinning when I was trying to remove this. If I go to the other side, this is what a healthier one looks like. See how it's flat there? There is a captive nut still on the other side of that hole there. You can kind of see the top of it there. That's where the plate will screw into. So I need to bend this plate on the other side flat, and instead of using that captive nut, there are ways you could reuse the one from the factory. You can, JB weld it, or you could put some silicone or something to hold it into place. But I think what I'm going to do instead is bend this back down a little bit to give me some room. And I think I'm going to use like a U-bolt, like a speed nut type of U-bolt, since it is a flat thing that I could slide something on top of. So let me go ahead and try that, and let's see how that turns out. All All right, so I'm just gonna use a little mini pry bar and see if I can pry this out of the way a little bit. All right, so I straightened it out a little bit more than it was. There's definitely room behind here that I could put in that U-bolt. I just need to see, because it is kind of, the hole's kind of tilted a little bit. I just need to make sure it lines up with the tray here, and hopefully that'll be good enough. Okay, these are those U-bolts I was talking about. Sometimes they're called speed nuts. The size that you would need is an M6 1.0. M6 is the size of the screw that comes with the kit. It's the diameter there, and the 1.0 is the thread pitch on here. So this is what it looks like. They call it a U-bolt just because it's U-shaped, and you slide it into place over that little flat metal piece, and now it's got the captive nut already on there. And once it's in place, we should be able to just put it in there. I've already tested this, so I know that it lines up just right as far as the thread pitch on this. So it just screws into place, and hopefully this will work. All right, guys, I just got a brief update here. I may need to get a couple more of these because I am missing some more underneath. And let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, at first I thought I would just need one of those U-bolts to clip onto this metal piece here, but I think I'm gonna need a couple more, because if you go further down the tray, this is just the tray. This front, underneath your bumper, this panel, there is no metal bar or anything behind this. It just screws into this, and there are no threads on this. So I won't be able to just stick a screw in there and have it hold anything. There's nothing on the back side that's captive to hold it in place. So I'm gonna need more of those U-bolts to just slide over this and make this work, because whatever came with the factory behind here is missing. Same with this one over here too. Nothing behind it holding anything in place. So I'm gonna need one of those U-bolts there. So I'm gonna need 3 in all. So I'm gonna need 3 of these, 1 for the damaged piece and 2 for that center tray that doesn't have any backing on them. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these in place and then get the front skid plate ready to install. All right, so I've got this U-bolt in place. I've got one over here too, and one further down as well. So I should be all set. Please send me your thoughts and prayers. Hopefully this works. All right, so let's get ready to get underneath with the plate. You're gonna need your bag of screws here. Take note of the size head here. Looks like you're gonna need a hex 4mm. You'll also need your 15mm socket from removing these two. We're gonna use the same bolts to put back in place. So these are the 2 that we'll need. The kit does come with some of this anti-seize. Make sure you use that. This is going to keep rust from building up onto the threads to, make it easy to remove when you need it. Do not use any kind of Loctite. That's just going to be a nightmare for whenever you need to have service done and take it in. They're going to have a hell of a time removing that stuff. So anti-seize. I'm finding it's easier to just put it on by hand first, put the bolt in your socket, and then feed it through the hole And this will at least hold the skid plate up while you get all the other bolts in place. Line everything up. So once you get everything bolted in place, they do have some little plastic caps to plug in the holes that are underneath. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll be done with the front. All right, so the front plate is installed. I did have a lot of problems with fitment, not because of the EVAnnex skid plate. It's perfectly built. The problem is I've got so much damage underneath the car from hitting things, flying up, that it's bent the whole under tray of the car in random places where some of those posts that have the captive nuts on it are just kind of bent a little bit. So getting that bolt up into place, it's just not lining up everywhere. Even towards the back of the skid plate where the battery pack is, there's some significant damage there as well. Luckily, nothing's been punctured. The battery is fine. It's just dented to where it's moved that hole where I need to get the bolt into slightly out of place. So I did have some problems getting it to fit in just right. Finally got it in there, but it took a long time. All right, the front skid plate is installed. Now it's time to move to the rear of the car. Let's see what kind of damage we have back there. The Rhino ramps work good for the front of the car, so I'm gonna go ahead and use it for the rear as well. All right, so if you look here, half of my factory skid plate is completely gone. Keep in mind, this is made out of that fiberboard, so it does tear easy when it gets wet. It's got some damage back there, but yeah, that side is completely torn off. So let's go ahead and get the old one off and put the new one on. All right, I've got the rear plate off from the factory. You can see what it's kind of made out of, this fiberboard stuff. If it gets wet, it's not really good. It's junk after that. You see how it just kind of frays? Yeah, if this gets wet, it frays there. Didn't record taking this off. You just undo all the bolts that hold it on. The main thing you need to know about this is that it uses a 10mm for all the bolts that hold this on. This metal piece here is riveted on there, so that doesn't come off. Where it was a little confusing is I had this piece come off when I unbolted it, but the other part that was riveted to this is missing from the car because it just got ripped off when it was wet somehow. All right, I just emptied my bag of hardware here to get a good look at what I'm looking at here. So there's some longer bolts there, some medium-sized ones, the short ones. These are some button heads. So just read the directions that come with the kit. You'll know where exactly each one goes. These are called standoffs, and they're kind of like spacers. There's two sizes, a shorter one and a taller one. Those are gonna go in the corners by the battery pack. The shorter ones on the outside, the longer ones on the inside, and I'll show you those. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these in. These are put in with a 13mm. All right, I'm gonna start with putting in them finger tight. The shorter one goes on this outside one. The longer one goes on this inside one here. So just start putting it in with your fingers first. Like I said, this acts as like a spacer. So it is threaded on the inside, so another bolt will screw into this as well. I don't know if you see that, but yeah, so it's hollow inside with threads, and because of this indentation here, you need a longer one. Didn't even need a ratchet for these. Just put them in finger tight. That's all you need. All right, this is the plate itself. And just to show you a little bit of how to get started with the bolts, there's gonna be 5 of the button head bolts. Those are the ones with the rounded top on the head of them, and they're going all the way through the center here. So you'll have one here, you'll have one in there, you'll have one in here, in there, and also right there. And that's basically, it's a rounded bolt because the wind isn't running across that because it's recessed in these holes here. All the others are flathead screws, and so the wind won't get disrupted when it passes over the flathead screws. The longest bolts, there's 3 of them, and those go back here towards the rear of the car. Just so you know, the orientation, the little wings here are at the front where the battery is. You'll have the 2 medium-sized screws on the top right here. And that is it. All right, I've got the plate positioned underneath, so all I need to do is climb under and lift it up and put one of the bolts in just to kind of hold it in place while I get all the others in. All right, I've got it fully installed. Everything's tightened down. Just kind of do it finger tight. You don't really need to torque down on these a whole lot. Yeah, that's gonna do a lot better than what was there before. Thanks again to EVAnnex for co-sponsoring this video. I'll make sure I put a link in the description below, as well as a coupon code to save some money. All right, it's all installed, and I do have some final thoughts. So if your car is fairly new and you know for a fact that you haven't run anything over, then I would recommend this skid plate because all your bolts are gonna line up. It's gonna offer a lot more protection than what comes with the car. The only downside is it does add a little extra weight. It's not super heavy. I was holding it with one hand, so it's not that much heavier. It's just not that flimsy fiberboard that falls apart when it gets wet. I know some of the newer cars, especially the Model Ys, have a plastic one, which seems to be like a better option than this fiberboard. But still, any kind of cement blocks or rocks that are fairly large could probably puncture that plastic. I think this is the best protection you can get. That being said though, I already had some significant damage to the mounting holes. So I did have some fitment problems on the front plate trying to get all the holes to line up because they were bent out of place. Now you probably won't have this issue because you're a good driver and I'm a bit reckless at times. So you should have no problems getting it all lined up and mounted. I'm glad I finally got it on. This gives me peace of mind that I don't have other debris damaging battery components and the wiring and the coolant hoses and the filters that are underneath. So hopefully this helps you guys out. I didn't really see a lot of videos online on installing these, especially the rear plate. So hope this helps some of you guys out. So if you like the video, let me know by hitting that thumbs up. It really helps the channel out. And if you'd like to see more, please consider subscribing. I'll see you guys in the near future. Bye.